Now let's go on to the second page of the results here, and let's transition a little bit. Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, kind of came back down to earth this weekend, back to reality for the driver of a number 97 Kaulig Racing Chevrolet. Of course, he won the last two races at Portland and Sonoma on the road courses, which are obviously his bread and butter, where he has a lot more experience than racing on ovals. Now, of course, you probably saw if you watched post-race press conference that we posted at Portland. My question to him was, after the theme of ovals came up, which ovals in particular are you looking at where you think you might have a shot at taking the win? And he gave a very confident answer, just simply saying the left-handed ones, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and spoke of his confidence that he is going to pick these tracks up and learn them eventually and find a way to showcase his talent and his speed on something that is so radically different from what he is accustomed to. Unfortunately, didn't get that opportunity this week here at Iowa, midway through the race, kind of losing it in the corner all on his own, crashing into the wall. That was the end of his day. But again, I don't think that that's indicative of his talent by any means, and I don't think it's something that we should necessarily be surprised about or be taken aback and start to panic about either. I think when you compare him to other drivers that have tried to make the switch from a different discipline, you think of Juan Pablo Montoya, who, after he won that Busch Series race in Mexico City, said immediately the next thing we need to do is win on an oval. He could never quite break through, never quite found that opportunity. He looked like he was going to have one at the Brickyard 400 in 2009. Unfortunately, he sped on pit road, and that was that. But it is a challenging thing to do, to come in here to a completely different discipline and find speed at those tracks, just as Marcus Ambrose, who perhaps is an even more apples to apples comparison for SVG, of a Supercars champion, very highly regarded in that series. I think even took a little bit longer to get up to speed on the road and street courses, or not street courses back then, I guess, but the road courses when Marcus Ambrose came over. Of course, SVG won his street course Cup Series NASCAR debut at Chicago last year, which was absolutely sensational. And came back, had another strong run at Indianapolis, now has a couple Xfinity wins. I think speaks very highly of his talent and his ability to adapt to these race cars. Marcus Ambrose even took a little bit of time to get up to speed on those types of tracks, and then, of course, broke through, won a couple of races in Nationwide at the time, won a couple of races at Watkins Glen in the Cup Series, but again, couldn't find that speed and that success to translate over to the ovals before he left NASCAR at the end of 2014. So SVG, I think, if you look at the drivers that have tried to make this switch before, it's not worth panicking over the fact that he, is still struggling at some of these ovals. Of course, other ovals he's had, I think, some very strong top 10 and top 15 runs at, which I think is where we would expect him to be right now on a day where everything goes his way, because the Kaulig cars, obviously, we've seen it with AJ Allmendinger and particularly Josh Williams as well this year. Kaulig doesn't seem to have the speed that they have had the last couple of years. And, Chris Rice and Matt Kaulig have even admitted as such. They need to work on giving their drivers better cars. SVG obviously has a lot to learn still on these oval tracks. I don't think we can let a 34th place finish at Iowa, in which he wrecked in practice or qualifying, had to go to a backup car, and then wrecked the backup in the race. That we shouldn't let that be something that tells the story of his season by any means, much less his ability to adapt to these ovals here. He still has the entire second half of this season to pick those tracks up, and we'll see what future plans hold for him. Of course, we talked about that a little bit last week on this show. Where will he end up in 2025? I think an argument that I've heard this week is the fact that the next-gen cars are quite different from the Xfinity cars, and you consider SVG is in his mid-30s, doesn't have as much time as some of these drivers like Sam Mayer or Riley Herbst might have to make a career for himself in the Cup Series. Maybe that's an argument for putting him in a next-gen car as soon as next year and not spending another year in Xfinity. But let's wait and see how the second half of the year plays out. Hopefully, this is just a little speed bump in the road, and SVG can bounce back from this and continue his progress through these ovals here in the Xfinity Series.